The train station buzzed with noise, honking taxis, blaring announcements, and the steady hum of footsteps moving in every direction. Yet amidst the crowd, the world seemed to slow for Lena. She stood quietly near platform 9, gripping a crumpled $5 bill in one hand and her daughter's tiny fingers in the other. The dim yellow lights above flickered, casting tired shadows on her face. Her shoes were soaked from a sudden downpour earlier, and her coat was barely enough against the evening chill. But the cold wasn't what made her shiver, it was the worry that never seemed to leave. Lena had been walking for hours after missing the last bus, desperately hunting for any last-minute job openings. Emma, her 6-year-old daughter, had been a little trooper, quiet, smiling, and trusting that mommy knew what she was doing. But Lena didn't, not really. She was doing her best to fake strength. Now, they were just one ticket away from getting home. But fate had one more cruel trick to play. She stepped to the ticket counter and slid the wrinkled bill under the glass. "1 adult and 1 child to Willow Creek," she said, forcing confidence into her voice. The clerk tapped the keys and said flatly, "$7.50. Lena's stomach sank. She unfolded the change from her pocket. Some coins, a quarter, 2 dimes. Not enough. She checked her bag again, as if a miracle would fall out. Nothing. Panic began to rise in her throat. Emma looked up at her, wide-eyed and trusting. "Mommy, are we going home now?" Lena's hands trembled. She leaned closer to the ticket window, her voice low and strained. I'm sorry, I can't pay the full amount. Is there any way?" "No exceptions," the clerk said, already looking past her to the next person in line. She turned away, tears brimming in her eyes, not wanting Emma to see her cry. Then she felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. "I've got it," said a voice behind her. Lena turned to see a man in his 30s. He wore a dark hoodie, jeans, and sneakers that had clearly seen better days. His beard was scruffy, and a pair of sunglasses sat on his cap. He didn't look wealthy or important, just another traveler passing through. "You don't have to do that," she said quickly, her pride flaring despite her desperation. "Please, I wasn't asking anyone. I was just..." "It's okay," he interrupted calmly. "Just let me help." Before she could protest further, he stepped forward and handed his card to the clerk. 2 tickets to Willow Creek. The transaction was done in seconds. Lena stood frozen, uncertain whether to be grateful or ashamed. She'd never had to rely on strangers before, not like this. Emma smiled and tugged the man's sleeve. "Thank you, mister," he chuckled. "You're welcome, sweetheart." Lena knelt down and zipped up Emma's coat, trying to mask her emotions. Then she rose and faced the man properly. "I don't know what to say. I wasn't expecting kindness from anyone today." "Then today needed to surprise you," he replied. There was a pause. "My name is Lena," she offered quietly. "Nice to meet you, Lena. I'm Theo. You didn't have to help me, Theo," she said, her voice cracking. "But thank you, for real. I've been in tight spots myself," he said, a strange flicker in his eyes. "More than people would guess." She nodded slowly, not knowing the full weight of his words. To her, he was just a kind stranger. She didn't know yet that this man was no ordinary passenger. That beneath that worn hoodie and soft tone hid a man whose signature could move markets. But right now, Theo was just someone who saw a woman struggling, and chose compassion. As the train's headlights approached in the distance, Lena tightened her grip on Emma's hand, and for the first time in days, her heart felt just a little lighter. Because kindness, when given freely, has a way of warming even the coldest evenings, and reminding the forgotten that they still matter. The train swayed gently as it cut through the evening countryside, its lights casting fleeting glows across darkened fields and sleeping towns. Inside the quiet coach, Lena sat with Emma curled against her side, her daughter's head resting peacefully on her lap. A half-eaten sandwich, one they had shared to stretch what little food remained, lay in a napkin on the fold-out tray. Lena's eyes wandered over the few passengers still awake. Across the aisle, the man who had helped them, Theo, sat alone, gazing silently out the window. The flickering light revealed only part of his face, but the calmness in his posture stood out. He looked like someone used to being unnoticed, unbothered, perhaps even hiding. Emma stirred slightly, then opened her eyes and whispered, "Mommy, I want to thank the train man again." Lena smiled softly. "He's not a train man, sweetheart. He was just helping." Still, before Lena could stop her, Emma slid off the seat, her tiny feet padding softly down the aisle toward Theo. "Hi," she chirped, standing beside him. Theo turned, a little surprised, then smiled. "Hey there, again. My name's Emma," she said proudly. "My mommy says you're an angel." He let out a quiet laugh. "An angel? Huh, that's a new one. You helped us when nobody else did." "Angels do that, I suppose they do," he replied, glancing toward Lena, who was already hurrying over, flustered and apologetic. "I'm so sorry," Lena said quickly. "She's just friendly. It's fine," Theo said gently. "She's got a good heart. She thinks everyone who helps us must be magic." Theo tilted his head slightly. "Well, the world could use a bit more magic, couldn't it?" Lena chuckled despite herself. It was the first real laugh she'd had in days, maybe weeks. She took a seat across from him while Emma plopped down beside him without hesitation. "You said you've been in tight spots before," Lena said after a pause, her voice soft, curious. "You don't look like someone who knows struggle." Theo smiled faintly. "Looks are deceiving. I've slept on benches, lived off vending machine crackers. God laughed out of more rooms than I can count." Lena blinked, surprised by the honesty. "And now, I just help where I can. Sometimes that means buying a train ticket." "But why us?" she asked, not accusing, just genuinely wondering. He looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing whether to say more. "Because years ago, someone did it for me. I never forgot that feeling, when a stranger reminded me I still mattered." Lena nodded slowly, her chest tightening. She understood that feeling all too well. "You know," Theo said, turning to Emma, "you're lucky. Your mom is strong. She's the strongest," Emma declared proudly, hugging Lena's arm. "She even makes soup when we don't have stuff for soup." Theo laughed. "That's a real talent. I just get creative with hot water and spices," Lena muttered, a little embarrassed. But her smile lingered. They spoke for a while longer, the three of them exchanging quiet stories beneath the humming lights. It felt unreal, this moment of connection with a stranger, like they had stepped into a little pocket of peace suspended in time. The train rocked gently, the darkness outside growing thicker. Emma yawned and leaned her head on Theo's arm. "Do you mind?" Lena asked. "Not at all," Theo said, adjusting his seat so she could rest more comfortably. Lena watched them, her heart full of something she hadn't felt in so long, safety. She didn't know who this man really was. All she knew was that when she had whispered, "I'm sorry I can't pay," he hadn't looked away. He had leaned in, and in a world that often turned its back on women like her, tired, broke, and trying, this small act of kindness felt like a lifeline. Some people walk into your life quietly, with no grand entrance. But they leave behind a warmth that lingers, long after the train pulls away. As the train neared their stop, Lena gathered her things. Theo stood too, slipping a small card into her hand. "If you're ever in need of work, call this number," he said. "Mention my name, Theo Langston." She stared at the card. Her breath caught. Langston Industries. The name rang like thunder in her mind. It was one of the country's largest tech corporations. Billionaire founder, elusive and rarely seen in public. "You're him," she whispered, stunned. He smiled warmly. "Just a man with a hoodie and a heart." Before she could say another word, the train doors opened. He stepped off and disappeared into the crowd. Lena clutched the card to her chest, tears rising in her eyes, not from sadness, but from hope. Sometimes, the kindest hearts are hidden behind ordinary clothes. And sometimes, a whispered apology becomes the start of a brand new life. As the train slowed into Willow Creek, the soft screech of brakes broke the quiet comfort they had all slipped into. Lena gently lifted Emma, now fast asleep, from Theo's arm. She offered him one final, grateful smile, the kind of smile that held more emotion than words ever could. Theo stood as well, slipping a small business card into Lena's hand. "If you're ever looking for work, call this number," he said quietly. "Tell them Theo Langston sent you." Lena blinked, confused. The name rang in her ears like a bell. Her fingers trembled as she read it again, Langston Industries. One of the most powerful tech firms in the country. The man she had mistaken for just a kind stranger, was its founder. By the time she looked up, Theo was already gone, disappearing into the crowd like he had never been there at all. Tears welled in Lena's eyes, but not from despair. For once, they came from hope. From the realization that even in her darkest moment, someone had seen her. Not pitied her, but believed in her worth enough to offer a chance, without expecting anything in return. And that's the thing about kindness. It doesn't always wear a suit or announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes, it's dressed in a hoodie, sitting silently across the aisle, offering help with nothing but a soft smile. That night, a single mother and her daughter stepped off a train forever changed, not because they were rescued, but because they were reminded that they were never invisible. All it took was a stranger, who wasn't really a stranger at all. Dash dash dash.